What's up, fam? Helicopters. I've been reading I've been reading this book. This is one of the ones I found at the library. Tattoos on the Heart. I felt like I read this early on in my recovery or heard about it. It was written in 2010, so it was like during that era when I lived in Eugene when I was in school. I thought it was by a Buddhist author, but it's actually by a Christian. It's a Jesuit priest, and he started this. It's huge now. This is back in the 80s and the 90s and it's here in Los Angeles. But it was like when there was like major epidemic with like gang killings and all kinds of stuff in the 80s and 90s, and he started. He was a pastor at this church and started a whole bunch of programs that have grown into this like huge across a lot of different industries, but they work a lot with people from gangs and people have backgrounds with addiction and all kinds of stuff. And funny enough, Victory Outreach, where I got sober the first time in 2000, that church started here out of Los Angeles as well. I was in one of the churches in Colorado, but hallelujah. My neck has been popping a lot lately. My neck and my back. Thank you, angels. Thank you, everyone who's been sending me prayers for that. Just powerful, man. I've been reading this book the last couple of days, and just a bucket of tears spilling over, man, nonstop. Feels really good, and just being reminded of the power of God's love, man. The power of God's freaking love. I haven't been a real regular member of a church or even like even like groups like doing step work and stuff like that. You know, I've been working my own path and forging my own path for quite a long time. But I'm being reminded in recent months of my roots and you know what I'm here for and how I got here and just how powerful it can be to have other people on the journey with us. This book is another good reminder, and not like I was never like, you know, gangs and stuff like that was not like a big part of my life, but on the periphery when I lived in Colorado, on the periphery. But the woundedness underlying a lot of the ways that it expresses out in the world, the woundedness is usually the same. It comes from family trauma, damage, parents with addiction, mental illness, etc. Trauma in our childhood, man, almost invariably. I'm really vibing with this author particularly because he's a Jesuit priest, but very open-minded. Seemingly, he quotes a lot of poetry and a lot of different authors, and he had I guess he had a master's in literature before, when he was studying for seminary or clergy or whatever. But he's quoting like Hafiz and Rumi a lot. I found a Rumi book in that thing also, which is, I used to have a copy of this same book, and it's one of my favorite ones. Or Hafiz, not Rumi. It's a Hafiz book. But they have a very similar. They come from a similar era and very similar, like beautiful spiritual writing. But this guy quotes a lot of that stuff and refers to God in both the male and the female forms, which I really appreciate. Just so many reminders, man. Just so many reminders. I've been really beaten up on myself this past like 6 or 8 months. and just going into a lot of deep dives, a lot more deep dives with healing and my process, my journey, and so many reminders. Like, first, it's not ever over, dude, or it doesn't. I mean, I don't know. I believe we can get to a place where we're not like into healing, fucking constantly dealing with one thing after another, like processing shit, childhood stuff, especially in trauma, like the really gnarly stuff, you know. I think we can get to where, like, you know, stuff's pretty well resolved. We're not having to, like, you know, be mucking around in that all the time. Even if we're healers, even if we're empaths, even if what we do is you know, healing for other people, I think we can get our own selves, our own internal stuff pretty well cleared out. But just a reminder also that it doesn't need to be done. It doesn't need to be finished, you know. Oftentimes it is like a spiral or a loop, and it can feel like we're in the same place that we were before, but usually we're at a higher place on the spiral, covering similar territory, but from a higher level and a higher and more clear and more clean level, with better tools oftentimes and more wisdom, more clarity. And part B of that is that also, like, we don't have to do this shit alone. We don't have to do it alone. A lot of us do for long stretches of time, but a lot of us who have gone through like really painful things stay stuck in those things and those patterns because we feel like we have to do it alone, and we were made to feel that way oftentimes our whole lives for one reason or another, or things just got so bad that we got to where we felt like there was nobody around, there was nobody that we could freaking trust. I know so many of us in the Healing Collective have had that experience or are in some version of that experience right now, man. Pete Walker talks about, he has a good book on CPTSD, From Surviving to Thriving. He talks about bibliotherapy and some of us who've been really mangled by other people. The closest we can find to a trustworthy human is through books, through authors, and he calls it bibliotherapy. And a lot of us need to start there, and a lot of us stay there in terms of like human connections and relationships. But having those voices in the wilderness and having people saying things that our heart recognizes is true on some deep level, but we've never heard it come out of another person's mouth. It can be profoundly healing, and it can really change things up and unblock stuck energy, man. Stuck energy in our hearts, grief, pain, whatever it might be. You know, that shit can live anywhere in our body, man. I think a lot of times grief in particular, and anger and rage for when our boundaries were violated from when we were children, especially young children, it tends to live in our heart and lungs. But I think that a lot of autoimmune disorders from what I've heard and what I've read from people that work, you know, professionally, autoimmune disorders often come from childhood abuse as well, or severe trauma, like war trauma and stuff like that. That's, if it's really consistent during the child's life, our bodies will start attacking themselves. But when it's from our parents, it tends to be like a lot of grief and a lot of stuff in our heart. Anyways, if you're looking for some healing, and you haven't had any good movement for a period of time, or you're kind of at a plateau, man, books can be a surprising source of like getting down in there, finding stuff that we didn't even know about, maybe. And you know, seasons change, things change, life moves on. I'm pretty sick of being in this healing process myself, but it's like some of the stuff I've realized in recent months is not like, it's not like I was ever off track, really. It's not like I was ever way off track, but just some really beautiful reminders of like what's important to me and why. And my relationship with God is taken on a really beautiful kind of new glow about it. Again, not that I ever left it. I've always been, since I've been in recovery, always like daily prayer, daily meditation. But just so much relief and release. Not just in the last 6 months, but over the past couple of years. 2025 is like the biggest. Well, 24 and 25. Shit that I found out about. There's no way I could have known it before. Especially like family stuff, family dysfunction stuff. Anyways, if you're having a hard time, keep going. Reach out to somebody, man. Just fucking reach out to somebody. There are safe people out there. Other people that are in recovery. People walking this path. A lot of really, really good people out there. There are a lot of good people in churches and spiritual organizations as well. But anyhow, hope y'all are having a good Saturday evening. Enjoying some doggy snugs if you have a doggy, or kitty snugs if you have kitty cats, or both if you got both, or people snugs if you got good people in your life. It's good. These things are really good for modulating our immune system and nervous system. Pretty much all mammals, all pack mammals at least. Higher primates and a lot of canines and felines. Felines to an extent. They're not as like pack oriented, but our nervous systems co-regulate. Kind of need each other.